So a warm welcome to everybody. And if I may say that, a happy new year, a healthy and prosperous one. Um, Although I heard that the legal profession has not been as hardly hit as predicted. So the prosperity will eventually kick in again. But I think more important, it's actually to look after everybody's health. And so therefore, congratulations to one of our speakers actually managing to get closer to vaccination today. And so therefore, Aileen, you next time you need to report back on how it actually went, because most of us will not actually see the privilege or not have the privilege to get anywhere near close due to our fabulous governments actually who have failed actually to order sufficient quantities actually in time. But nonetheless, that's not the topic of today. A special welcome to today's speakers. First of all, actually, Aileen and Karen. Aileen based in the, if I may say so, in the surroundings of New York, and Karen actually talking to us from snowy Canada with a fabulous. I mean, unfortunately, we don't get the backdrop actually with your skiing actually pictures. There it is.
No, but you can see the snow. The snow is falling. You can see my Postit notes too, but there's lots of snow today.
We envy you for that, to be honest. And then last but not least, Harald from rainy Germany. And so, you know, there's something in it for everybody. And great to see all of you actually being back today from the most southern tip of Africa, Naomi and Jackie, up to North America. I'm not sure where all of you actually are based, but I'm pretty sure it will cover the globe pretty strategically. So great having you back, and therefore thanks for joining us. This is going to be the last session of the first wave, number 7. We'll take a small break after that, and then actually return end of February with a new actually series of hopefully also quite exciting speakers. For today, I'd like to hand over without further ado to Aileen, who's going to talk about value creation and the competency framework. Over to you, Aileen.
Okay, thank you very much.
And if you, sorry for interrupting, if you could say a few words on yourself and just introduce yourself briefly to the audience.
Well, I'm glad to do that. I practiced law for 20 years, and I got very frustrated with how inefficient the legal profession was, how it really didn't seem to serve clients. It seemed to serve lawyers being artists and craftspeople rather than problem solvers. And I scratched my head and said, how can I figure out a way to change things? And the easy answer was to go get an MBA, because I thought, well, business is about getting stuff done, where it's more of a trade school than it is, you know, a guild. And so I got my MBA, and I subsequently became a partner at PricewaterhouseCoopers when they were first launching consulting in legal services. And that's a practice that's been around at this point now for 30 years. The group ebbed and flowed. And during the ebb period, I left and took an entrepreneurial bent and started my own firm. Since then, I've just been focused on building out tools, practices, and resources to help everyone apply project management practices to their work, whether it's substantive legal work in the sense of legal matter management, as we're all involved, or it's applying project management practices in a legal organization or a legal function. You know, one could say, well, why don't you just need a PMP? What's special about legal project management? And the answer is, you've got to understand the industry, you've got to understand the culture, and PMI, in fact, recognizes that, as I'll show you in some of my slides, that being competent as a project manager is about having industry expertise. So while we may not necessarily have to call somebody in a law department operations role or a law firm operations role a legal project manager when they are trying to get things done in that environment, nevertheless, the term legal project management writ large applies to both matter management and project / getting things done in the legal environment as I've come to focus on it. And when I say as I've come to focus on it, it all goes back to some early work that our colleague Larry Bridgesmith did when he was a pioneer supporting CLOC, the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium. And he was a leader in launching their legal project management initiative. 5 years later, it's morphed, it's evolved. And with Christina Jackson, who I see has joined the call and who comes from a legal ops background, and some other folks who I know were planning to look at the video, we have a group at CLOC focusing on how legal project and program management help support both the management of legal matters. So we have one group focusing on what we're calling legal matter lifecycle management. And that is a perfect dovetail, frankly, into what Karen is going to present to you. And then we have a second work stream that focuses on how project management capabilities help support the CLOC core competency model of the types of things that a legal operation function has to be good at to enable the lawyers to do what they need to be good at, which is deliver service, professional services, legal services, counsel to their clients. So against that backdrop of what I've been doing in that frame, I also do one other thing, which is, my now self-interested, shameless promotion, which is I've built an e-learning platform that focuses on on-demand videos and coaching real-time, dealing with all the soft skills that they don't teach you in law school and to a certain extent don't teach you in business school. And that comes out of my belief, and as I'm going to show you in the competency model, that the soft skills and personal effectiveness are critical as well. I personally have found in my career that the soft skills are the hardest, and they're the hardest in part because of my own personality and my own disposition, and just the awareness that it's something that I need to be mindful about has made an enormous difference. So with that context of my background, I'd like to now give you a very quick overview of the topics relating to competency models for legal project management that I've been involved in developing. And this draws on work from a number of different dimensions, and all of it is laid out in my chapter in the book. And what I have in the book was current as of obviously October when it went to press. So let me get my slide going here. And I won't pain you with it too much, I promise. Okay, now let's go into slide view. So this is pretty much going to be a bunch of pictures and visuals. When you think about what it takes to be effective, it's a combination of concrete knowledge, skills, and attitude. And if you think of this Venn diagram, it presents it as if attitude, knowledge, and skills all are there in equal forms. We know that for ourselves, we can have an enormous amount of knowledge, poor skills, and a great attitude, or any other combination along the way. But in building a competency model, I looked at different resources, both from the project management world, from outcome-based education outside of legal, outside of project management. And I tried to identify where the commonalities were and where there are ideas that could be brought to bear for what we're trying to accomplish in not just improving the value and quality of legal services, but also the individual effectiveness and competency of all of us on this call and all the individuals who are project managers or contributing to the execution of projects, legal matters, fill in the blank. So from there, I said, okay, here are a bunch of good words to use as a start: attitude, knowledge, skills. What does it take to build it out? So I said, okay, we're talking about legal project managers, which are derived from project managers, and at least half the people on this call have PMPs. So let me go back and take a look at the project manager competency model within PMI. And so I did a fairly comprehensive search, discovered that nothing has been updated since about 2007. In fact, a great deal of the material gets revised, but at its core, it goes back to this slide that I pulled out of a presentation that was done in the Ukraine by a guy from the UK. So I don't have the attribution on there, but just to let you know, this is something that puts it together very well. And basically, it goes through it the same way. I think the Venn diagram would be that, how does the organization work and what's the knowledge for the context in which you are going to have a project sponsor? How is that contextualized by the industry or the domain you're in, as well as the function or the role you have within that industry? So translate. I am a lawyer in a law firm. Lawyer is the function. Law firm is also the function. It's the legal domain. The organization is the law firm. And then I have the knowledge of the things I do as a lawyer. Translation 2.
Sorry, Aileen, it seems like we're not getting your slide. You're not sharing it.
Let's resume it. There we go. Resume share. Is that helping? Let's stop share and let's resume share.
The slides just weren't advancing, Aileen. If you were intending to advance
you got stuck with the first one.
We only were seeing the first slide.
All right, well, let me try it again. Probably in moving the cursor, I cursed it.
So now we see it.
No? Yes?
Yeah.
Resume share, is it good or no?
It's okay. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So,
but Aileen, you're not actually playing your slides. You're just showing us the back end of your PowerPoint.
Yes.
So we're not seeing them as if they're slides. We're seeing them. We're getting your view, the editing view.
Yeah, I know. All right. So just try one more. Let me try one more thing. Okay. Let me try the slides again because I thought I was playing them. All right, let's try this. Thank you for your patience.
Now we're just seeing your desktop.
Yeah, I know. This is a disaster today. I feel like, Karen, I should give you control so that you can get me cleaned up today. Let me stop the share and let me try again. And now I think we will have it. How is that?
No, we're still seeing the back end. Can you hit play on your slides?
Yeah, so isn't that what we're doing?
No, all I'm
No.
seeing, we're seeing the back end. You must be playing them to a different screen, are you?
Yeah,
Can you select which screen you're sharing? Because we're not seeing the actual play of your slides. We can, I mean, we can see your graphics. So if you want to just carry on, we can go.
Yeah,
this way.
at this point, are you seeing the graphic?
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
It's
And
just
are
not
you
in
seeing
presentation mode.
I'm sorry?
It's just not in presentation mode. We see.
Right, okay.
That's fine.
And so let's
So
just
we're experiencing similar issues today, so that might be something that Zoom is messing with in the background.
Could be.
okay. So, all right, well, I guess all I can say is I have one other option because I am working off two screens. Let me pull out one of the screens and see if that gets better. And then if that fails, then it fails. Let's see.
Don't worry, Aileen. This is as long as we can actually see your slides, it's all fine.
Okay. What can you see now?
Now we do see your own internal presentation mode.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. All right, so let me just stop one more thing and then I'll come back and then declare failure. Okay.
Okay, Aileen, we can do the following. I just actually got your slides up. We can run it from over here, and you
Okay.
just tell me when you actually want to move on. Would
All right,
that
so
work for you?
Yeah, that would be great. Since clearly we have some kind of disability here.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Well, we'll have to get our editor to take out all of the technical difficulties. Okay, so you saw this slide. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, so is this helping now? So what we've got is bottom left-hand corner, industry, domain, functional competency. We're lawyer in the legal industry, organization, practices, and knowledge in a law firm, substantive practice of law. Translate for a legal operations professional. They're in the legal operation. Their job is legal ops, and the organization is the legal function in a corporate law department, and they have the knowledge associated with getting things done there. And then in between, you can envision the legal project manager in the law firm and where they fit according to those categories. So PMI already presents through its competency model the architecture for what a legal project management competency model could be. Then you look at the other three dimensions and you basically say project management knowledge. Those are the different knowledge areas in the PMBOK. Personal competency, then you're looking at personal skills. It's one thing to say you have to have knowledge of communication as part of the PMBOK knowledge areas, but how well does a person communicate? Do they understand their personality type? Do they understand the limitations of their disposition in the way in which that's helpful or impedes communication? Do they understand the audience to whom they are making their presentation? You know, where understanding personality and social styles is very important. And then personal competency also goes to something that is very much in the universe of what David and Karen do, which is having the disposition for continuous improvement. That it's not just a matter of knowing yourself, but having curiosity, having the desire to adapt, change. Those are all personal characteristics. They're not concrete project knowledge characteristics. And then the last component in this, the performance competency, is the idea that you can have all of these things, but The model requires you to say, I have these things and I'm assessing it against a standard. So I have it, and am I a novice? Am I, middle of the road competent? Am I an expert? So, from a simplicity point of view, you're either, you're at 0, in which case you're not even on the spectrum. You're a novice, you've got a general level of competency, and then you're an expert, maybe you're capable of teaching it. So the competency assessment can be on whatever scale one chooses to do it. I've seen competency models that go from 1 to 10. I've seen competency models that go A, B, C. But that's an attribute of how we build the model. So these are all of the elements in the PMI framework. And I thought to myself, great, I've got an enormous amount to work with. Let me see if there's anything that's been done regarding lawyer competency models, so that then I'm tapping into the industry, the domain, and the functional competency at the bottom left-hand corner, which brings us to the next slide. Many of you have heard about the concept of the T-shaped lawyer, where the column of the T is about substantive knowledge, and so that would be the vertical, and the horizontal component in the T-shaped model brings in a number of different attributes. And as that was developed, project management was considered one of them. Financial acumen, business acumen was considered one of them. And there's a lot of work that's been done on the T-shaped model. More recently, a group has formulated what they're calling the Delta model for lawyers. And as you can see, 20th century lawyer. And it draws on all the elements that you just saw in the PMI model, focusing on knowledge of the law, subject matter expertise, defining what those components are, personal effectiveness, and knowledge of business and operations. And so the folks working on the Delta model pushed it out there, demonstrated how it was a more, in my mind, holistic view than the T-shaped model, because it emphasizes not an either or, but an interactivity among the elements. From there, they went into the next iteration. And so if you could please, Ignaz, move the slide to Delta Model 4.0. That's for lawyers. And now let's go into, click it, Modern Legal Professional. Just click again for the animation. So now we're moving from the lawyers who may have project management skills into, no, go back one, into legal professionals. And the legal professional here is, we've now taken those 3 elements again, and it amplifies them with broader definitions of the categories. Because as you can see, the practice here is, not presented in terms of legal writing or research. It presents it in a much broader way and does the same thing by subdividing across this to say, this isn't just relevant for the modern lawyer, it's for anybody who is a professional in the legal ecosystem, in the legal industry. And so by looking at it this way, it says, we're breaking down the guild, if you will, of what lawyers do as only a lawyer thing, and saying lawyers and allied professionals, which include, project managers, data analysts, KM people, finance people, fill in the blanks, and apologize to anybody whose job I've left out, but I think you are clearly a professional in the legal industry and encompassed by this. So how do you adapt that? Next slide shows you the adaptation to the legal solutions architect. Now take a look, exact same dimensions, but it has a movable center point, and basically says that if your predominant competency is in business operations, like the job that people in legal ops roles have, then you've got to all three of these elements, but you only need a foundational knowledge of the law, but you want to emphasize your skill set around your business and operations. And obviously, personal effectiveness is critical. At some level, this demonstrates that your personal effectiveness weighting is more important than your knowledge of the law. Not to discount your need to know the knowledge of law, that's contextual, but it manipulates it according to those variables. So that's how I started building my article and my framework for thinking about how do we have, my title was Advancing the Legal Value Paradigm. So I said, okay, paradigm is a way of doing things. Legal and value are about effective client service delivery and solving clients' problems, addressing their opportunities and challenges, infusing it with legal expertise. And as you can hear, I emphasize the client has an issue, an opportunity, or a challenge. It's only the legal profession that says, oh, they've got a legal problem, they've got a legal issue. No, they've got a business opportunity or problem, they've got a personal opportunity or problem. Law is an input, a tool that enables them to accomplish their objectives. And as a consequence, in order to have effective project managers or people using project management skills, we need to find a way to build out a model that is not just this delta model moving target, but makes it very specific about what's involved. Which brings us to the last slide, which is that the last slide is Ignaz and I and David Roof, based in the US, who is one of the fathers of legal project management and law firms in the US, Todd Hutchison and Anthony Smith of the International Institute of Legal Project Management have been working on adapting everything that I just presented to you to build a competency model. And we've been at it pretty much since November. And this is what we have come up with so far. And what we're trying to do through this is basically build out the knowledge areas and treating the soft skills as a knowledge area that must be acquired rather than a standalone competency. Because what we're trying to emphasize is, and again, this is because we're trying to adapt it uniquely to the audience that we're dealing with, is that understanding project dynamics, which bring in the soft skills and bring in, what I was calling the attitude and the personality styles, are as critical as the other four elements. The other four elements are testable, easily communicated, although not necessarily easily adopted or mastered, areas of knowledge. But the whole area of soft skills has been given short shrift in our industry, and that's why we concluded that we would bake it into the knowledge areas. Whether this approach is the best approach, certainly not the only approach. I'm aware of at least 3 other LPM competency models being built out by other groups today. It remains to be seen, but this is a way in which I'm trying to build a model based on the what I'll call the raw materials coming out of that very first slide. And if you just want to go back to that quickly, which is to say, we've got to find a way to have an objective measure of competence based on the three components: skills, which are practical workplace, measurable, demonstratable; knowledge, which we can call training, or as they said in the old days, book learning; and attitude. And using all of that to promote competence so that we have people with the ability to advance what we're all trying to do through our participation in this community. And we can take the slides off.
Thanks, Aileen.
Thank you so much. And to all of you, I can tell you what Aileen quickly went through has been sort of not a headache, but quite an uphill battle actually, in terms of technical terms, discussions, and so forth, in order to really actually find something that would actually better reflect today's realities in terms of actually a competency model. And I can't remember how many sessions we've had thus far.
We're up to numbers. The next one is number 8.
So any questions from the audience? Anyone who wants to raise actually? Marian, you're on mute.
That was hands clapping.
That was hands clapping.
All the others who did that word.
Yoga pose.
Yes, namaste.
Yes, namaste. Yeah, look, Ignaz is right. It's really been a lot of heavy lifting, but as I say in the article, this is an extraordinary change management initiative. If we want this model to be accepted, if we want the idea of a model to be accepted, it's going to require a lot of communication, a lot of testing, and hopefully everybody on this call will find a way to find one person to help us test it with, because that's the key to having a model with integrity and that's useful, rather than a model that gets put on a website somewhere.
Very true. Any questions? If not, I would like to ask one, if I may, and I would like to ask the question to Helga. Based on your experience, your in-house experience in particular, obviously you ran, these in-house operations are by numbers at least equal to law firms, sometimes even bigger. So the question of competency models, and then given the fact that usually training and development is a more mature function actually in-house than it is actually in a corporate environment than it is actually at a law firm. Has something like that been ever raised? Probably yes, but in which way did you tackle actually the challenge?
Interesting question. Thanks, Ignaz. Certainly in my experience, the competency framework that the legal function uses is aligned with the overall global corporate competency model. So rather than coming at it from necessarily a legal perspective, it came more from a business perspective. So you can already see where there might be gaps and kind of challenges in that respect. And so people get measured both on the hard skills, the technical skills, but they also get measured on the softer skills that Aileen mentioned in her presentation today. From my experience within legal, certainly emphasis has been very much on the competency framework for lawyers rather than the legal operations function, which is actually quite a large part of the legal function as well. So you've got a ratio of about 1 to 10 of legal ops to lawyers in a larger corporate outfit, I guess. I think I really loved your presentation, Aileen, and I'm in one of the 3 groups, hopefully, that you referenced earlier as well. I've been working with a group of law firms on developing a competency framework, but more on the legal project manager. And I loved the last slide with the moving pyramid shape effectively, because that's exactly, we ended in, inadvertently in exactly the same place, in that as a project manager within the legal function ops, or indeed in a law firm, yes, you do need to have legal knowledge and some knowledge of the, the industry that you work in, but you also need a lot of the other, legal operations and or sort of wider business skills as well. So it's really interesting that we actually came to very similar conclusions. So I'm looking forward to continuing that conversation with you.
No, I'm very excited. Maybe we'll be able to merge. You
Yeah.
heard it here, everybody.
I also think the rolling it out is the big bit. I think we know what skills people need, and I would even say that communication and stakeholder management skills, even though we call them soft, they are actually really fundamental.
They're the
skills.
hardest.
Yeah, it's a bit like doctors who get criticized for a lack of bedside
Right.
sort of manners, and it reminds me of that conversation. And I think lawyers need to work on that a lot as well, because if you get that bit right, selling your services, providing your services, working with your clients, working with your colleagues becomes a lot easier and more efficient and more effective as well. So it really underpins everything people do, we do.
Right, and as a project manager, you have influence, but you don't have authority.
Absolutely.
And particularly in a law firm environment, I think it's even more challenging because you don't have the same, how shall I put it, performance management systems and chain in command. So authority is a very mushy concept to begin with. The most you can have is influence. And what does that actually mean? How do you get access to have influence? These are not obvious things to people just starting out.
Ignaz, we both worked at A&O for a while, and I remember David Morley, the then senior partner, saying in a presentation, in a town hall kind of presentation, that he himself doesn't really have any authority. He has influence, and he can, try and bring people along with him, whether they be, clients or colleagues or peers, or indeed his firm. But even he, as a very senior executive at the time, this is a few years ago now, said exactly that you don't necessarily have authority. I think my experience in terms of authority in a corporate was different. You have a more rigid structure than maybe in a law firm or partnership culture. And so from that perspective, there is a semblance of more authority in a corporate world.
Semblance, I think, is the word.
Yes.
That's great. That's really helpful. And I'm glad to hear, Helga, that your group is, we're sort of converging in different ways, because that's the only way we're going to advance the adoption of this framework, regardless of, who finishes first or who disseminates it first. I think that's less important than the fact that we've got a groundswell of people who have shared ideas and are trying to advance this. And I actually have spoken to, one of the folks involved in your initiative, because we're trying to figure out, is there a way that the clock group can collaborate on this issue as well? Right now, we're dealing with organizational competencies, but perhaps next year we'll be focusing on individual competencies.
Great. Does that answer your question, Ignaz?
It does, and it's interesting to listen to the both of you, because ultimately you sort of cover certain facets of it, and there's probably a few more sort of thinking of the topic from the perspective of, say, an alternative legal service provider, and an organization structure that may provide a very different approach to the market as well. I mean, or compared to traditional law firms and traditional corporates. So being somewhere in between. Not sure, Naomi, whether you can hear us, but it would be interesting to hear your thoughts as well. I mean, Exigent obviously runs quite a massive operation across borders. So in these cases, that must be something on your table as well. Not sure she's still around, but
I'm here, but I just need to go and check on my parents. I didn't hear your question, Ignaz.
no, sorry for that. I just said the way you position yourself somewhere between a sort of typical corporate and a typical law firm, in between, obviously actually addressing or finding a suitable competency model and deriving from that actually a way to assess competencies in order to actually fulfill your business purpose must be also
Right.
quite an interesting aspect and something that you need to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, it actually was quite a challenging one for us for a while in the business, right? And we have now, we've got a new director on board that started looking at what do we look at and how are we able to combine what probably 50% of our staff are traditional lawyers, but having to have the project management and all other business related competencies. I haven't seen the result of what they have, but I'm sure some of this insight that I can even share with them would be very valuable because that's the process that we are going through right now.
I was guessing that, yeah. So obviously, I mean, coming from your type of business actually to the next topic is quite an easy one, from legal project management to legal process management. And some of you may wonder, why are we covering that? I mean, because academically, actually blending the two is a absolute no-no. So if one would do that actually in academic environment, professors would immediately actually ask you to either leave the room or actually find a way back to sanity, because obviously those are two very different things, at least what professors believe. But in our legal reality, they are not. And there's clearly actually a very close relationship. So therefore, quite glad actually to welcome you as well, Karen, and quite pleased actually and looking forward to what you going to have to say about it. I mean, obviously, this is exactly what you're covering, this sort of, the interface between the two and how they actually correlate and relate to each other.
And I'm going to bid thee adieu because I have to get into a car and drive to vaccine land. I will report next time.
All the best.
Thank you very much, everyone, and apologies for having to leave.
No problem. Yeah, so I mean, from our perspective, and I'll jump into my presentation in a minute, but from our perspective, getting process improvement right is absolutely foundational to having good legal project management. It's a skill set that project managers need, that people on the legal operations side need. The whole idea for us is we take a very, very practical approach. And our practical approach is centered on getting the right people doing the right thing at the right time, which actually leads me into my presentation. And let's just have a quick look to see whether or not Zoom is going to play a little more nicely with Keynote than it played with the, let me just see. You should be seeing a nice beach scene right now.
Yep, got it, Karen.
Fab. Okay. All right. So
there you go.
yes.
Yep. It's
This
good.
presentation is really all about bringing back boring. We are really practical, and we believe that it's very important that people get back to basics. So the problem facing...
Sorry, before you dive in, could you just give us a brief actually wrap up on what you actually do in your day-to-day business?
We're going to get to that.
Background. Good, perfect. Thank you.
We're going to get to that. I just like to start. I like to start presentations with just, situating you in where the problem is, because really the problem that people face is more interesting than my background. And we'll get to my background in a minute. But, most law firms, this is the problem that we see from the process improvement side, and that we see when law firms come to us for help. They don't come to us and say, I need project management. They come to us and say, I need help. And the problem that we see is that most law firms and legal departments have the wrong people doing the wrong things at the wrong time. But because they are so focused on things like realization rather than profitability or margins, they actually don't even see that they have the wrong people doing the wrong things at the wrong time. Even if they have to write down time, even if they have to write off time, they're still focusing on the wrong metrics. They're focused on the billable hour. They're focused on that big number, their size of their book of business. And we had a great example with one of our engagements a couple of years ago, but it was such a good example. I come back to it often. There was a very unprofitable employment law practice. They were really struggling. The firm was considering dumping them. Their billings were restricted by some really tight outside counsel guidelines. And that meant that their fees were capped for many stages of their litigation matters. They just couldn't charge for the number of hours they were putting into it. So the firm brought us in to help them improve their efficiency so that they could increase margins and so that they could make this work profitable again. One of the senior partners was not interested. She did not want to change how she worked. She would tell us over and over again, I've got a huge book of business. I have $1.2 million on my book of business. And that's true, she did, but that was only what she was billing for. That wasn't actually what they were recovering, and it wasn't what it was costing the firm. She was really inefficient. She handled a lot of the work personally, so she was doing work that she shouldn't have been doing. She wouldn't use templates or precedents. She insisted on starting agreements from scratch and getting her assistants and her associates to start from scratch. She hand wrote everything. And of course, she was not able to recover. Given the outside counsel guidelines that they faced, she was not able to recover for all the time that she and her team of associates were putting into this work. And in fact, when we ran the numbers, it was actually costing the firm $20,000 for her to have her 1.2 million book of business. So the firm was losing $20,000 for her to earn that money. So it wasn't until we showed her those numbers that she started to think, okay, I need to change the way I do my work. I need to think about efficiency. And it's the same for a lot of legal departments that bring us in. They're stretched really thin. And so they think the issue is we just need more, we need the budget so that we can throw some more people at it so that we can increase our headcount. I love listening to legal ops people on calls like this because you get it, but many of the groups that we work with don't get it. They just think that they need more people, but really they need to get the right people doing the right things at the right time. So just to tell you a little bit about why I take this perspective, I'm Karen Skinner. I'm a lawyer. I practiced like Aileen for about 20 years, but now I'm a lean legal consultant with a background in Lean Six Sigma. And my partner and I co-founded Gimbal, which is a lean practice management advisory company. David, my partner who's on this call, was also doing one of these sessions, he's waving, one of these sessions back in December. And what we do is we help lawyers build more profitable, more productive practices by working smarter. So they don't have to spend every waking moment working, so that they have time for the things that really matter to them, to their practices, and to their lives, right? So they have time to actually do things like go home and not miss their kid's birthday party or not miss, a basketball game. So what we do is we really focus, we get law firms to focus on their people and on their processes and how important it is to get their processes right before they even think about project management. And before you manage, David likes to say, if you're just managing the same old process and you don't put any effort into making that legal process more efficient or making the administrative processes more efficient that support the practice, then you are just being a good manager of a piss poor process. And that isn't delivering the value that you could deliver if you actually did some process improvement beforehand. This is not revolutionary for other industries. They do it all the time. Lawyers generally don't. So the theme for these talks with Ignaz is one big LPM idea. So I want to introduce you to, it's not really an idea, but it is, as I like to say, this is our secret weapon for getting the right people doing the right thing at the right time. And our secret weapon is boring. It's a Post-it note, right? It's the Post-it notes are super basic. You can see them on the wall behind me, but we need to get back to basics. And so what I want to talk about for the rest of my session today is using visual methods like Post-it notes to manage legal work and work allocation. And basically, I want to talk about how we have worked with law firms to apply the Kanban concept to manage legal work. So I'm going to tell you the story of one of our clients, and I'm going to show you how they used visual matter management and a lot of Post-it notes to completely change the way they staff their deals so that they can focus on getting the right people doing the right work at the right time. You can actually see a process map on the wall behind me. That's one we did earlier this week with a law firm in Vancouver. We've turned everything virtual. But I want to talk to you about a client that we have on the West Coast of the US. They're one of the top most profitable firms in the US. So they fall into what the Americans call the AmLaw 100. And they were really struggling with staffing their M&A transactions. Partners had no idea who was available to do the work. They would just call up their favorite associate, or they would grab somebody from the hallway, but they didn't have a plan and they couldn't see what work was being done by whom. And what ended up happening with that is that the work was not allocated evenly across their team of associates. That meant that some associates were swamped, they were burning out, they were miserable, and others were miserable because they weren't swamped. They didn't have enough work. They weren't getting the good files. They weren't being exposed to the training and the knowledge that they needed to grow as professionals. So the result from both of these sides was that this firm had a lot of attrition. They were losing associates at the mid-level, so around 5-6 years in. And I wonder if anybody on the call knows how much it costs a law firm in the American market to lose and then have to replace a fifth-year associate. Any ideas? You can let me know. Maybe I just see there's some stuff going on in the chat. Let me just see if anybody's got a guess. No. No ideas? Okay. Let's go back over here. It cost them $350,000. Ignaz is shaking his head. Is that kind of about what you were thinking it was going to be?
My guess was actually a year's salary, so less than that.
So was mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so what they had when we ran the numbers with them, we factored in the cost of the initial recruitment and training, which was now completely wasted, the time and effort that went into recruiting the replacement, including all the time that senior partners, which they had discounted, but all the time that senior partners have to spend reviewing the CVs and doing the interviews and then meeting amongst themselves, plus all the time they're recruiting their HR department and cost of recruiters and all of that. And this was a huge loss to the firm. They just couldn't carry on losing associates at that level. And on top of that, they were quite frustrated with the work that they were being asked to do. So not only were they losing people, but the people who were staying were frustrated. So here's what we did with them. We mapped out their process, and here they are doing the different sections, different phases you can see of their M&A transactions. And we started with the basics. We started with a lot of Postit notes, and we mapped out their process for running these types of transactions. And as we went through, the focus that we put on it was who's doing the work at each step. And as you're looking at this map and as you're telling me who's doing the work, is that the right person to do the work? On the map, the yellow blocks are tasks. The pink ones are all the problems that they identified around each of those tasks, and the blue were their ideas. And it's fun to look at this one. I don't know if you remember, David, but this is actually the last one that we did before COVID, because we were all like in one place and having fun.
And Seattle is such a nice place to be too. Seattle's a fabulous city.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, this is what we found out. So it shouldn't surprise anybody, but mid-level associates were doing lower level work that juniors could do, or even that paralegals could have done, or assistants could have done. I see Harold's nodding his head too. Junior associates were doing a lot of admin work, and they were also doing a huge amount of project management with no training whatsoever. So they were quite stressed. The paralegals had tons of administrative work and not so much legal work, and the assistants themselves were underused. So that was going on. And at the same time, this is a huge firm, and they had a full word processing department that actually worked almost 24 hours a day, but nobody in the group would use them. So what was happening across the board in this whole transaction was the wrong people were doing the wrong work at the wrong time. So in order to help them with their initial problem, which was to end the attrition and staff their files appropriately, figure out an easy way for them to see who was doing what work, we were also able to work with them on making sure the right people were doing the right work. So we restructured the way that work was handled. We were able to up-level a lot of the skills in the word processing department because the lawyers didn't trust them to get the work done right. So there was a whole training component that had to happen in word processing so that work could be shifted to word processing, because, $600 an hour lawyers should not be formatting their documents to try to fix the outline format in Word. They should not be wasting any time doing it. So that got restructured. They created a project management role, and they're starting to fill it. But the big issue that remained for them was they still couldn't see who was working on what across the whole raft of files that they had in the department, so that they still weren't able to allocate work fairly amongst their pool of associates. So we used the same visual matter management strategy that we use to manage complex transactions to create a visual tool for them to see inside their workload. I'm assuming everybody on the call is familiar with Kanban boards. So can you, if not, then I can talk a little bit more about that, but I'm sure most of you understand what they are. It's just a visual task management system. Every task goes on a card, cards move through your columns, and the columns represent the stages or the phases of your work. So we decided to use this same approach for staffing. We had already mapped out their process, so we had very clear phases for their M&A transactions, and they had their list of all of their outstanding matters. And we created a series of Kanban, we created one Kanban board that had their phases, and you can see them across the top. And this is a mock-up of it, because obviously we can't share their exact table. It's a mock-up, but it shows you how you would do it. This is viewed by phase. So you see the phases across the top, and each of those cards represents a different open matter that is, generally speaking, at that particular phase of the process, in that life cycle of the matter. We actually did this in Smartsheet, and the reason we did is this team, even before COVID, has a series of offices, and they work across their offices. So it was very important that they have some tool that they could use to run their files remotely and give vision into their workload to the managing partner of this particular group. And it's interesting because even before COVID, she spent most of her time traveling back and forth between Seattle and Virginia on the opposite coast, because she actually lives in Virginia. And since COVID, she's been in Virginia the whole time. And she runs this incredibly profitable practice that is actually based in Seattle out of her Virginia home. The nice thing about using Smartsheet, and again, this is like a really basic tool. This is why I talk about bringing back boring and practical when you're talking about managing matters or doing process improvement. This is a really basic tool. But the nice thing about Smartsheet is that it allowed us to say, okay, you can view by phase, you can see where all the work is. Then you can view by the supervising attorney. You can filter it so that you can then see how many different files the different partners have on. So the managing partner can know that, yes, we've got 6 files on and they're in different phases, and Karen, the partner named Karen, has 4, and someone named Paula has 4, and they can get a sense of who's got the work. But if you filter by senior associate, and this is what was working really well for them, you could filter by senior associate, or you could even filter by junior, but you could then get, based on each person's name, you could see exactly how many files that they were involved in. So this allowed them to look across their raft of associates and say, okay, you know what? Adam's only got 1 file. Is that because nobody's giving Adam work? And then we need to jump in and figure out why Adam isn't getting any work. Then we need to manage, maybe he needs more training. Maybe he needs more of those soft skills that Aileen was talking about. Maybe he's just on a huge file and 1 is all he can handle. But it allowed them to proactively solve some of the HR issues that were causing the associates to leave. They know they would look at this and they'd say, okay, we cannot give Alicia any more work. She's got 5 matters on right now. They also were able to take it down another level and look at what some of their key paralegals and support staff were doing so that they could assess the workload at that level. And they now are using this really simple visual Kanban approach to track work and really assess workload across the company. I'm just going to stop the share because that's all I really wanted to show you. But essentially, because we worked on their processes first, we were able to ensure that they were assigning work to the right people at the right time within their department, that they had the right people doing the right work. And then by implementing a really basic Kanban tool, they were then able to make sure that they were allocating the right work to the right people at the right time. They were able to ensure that their attorneys were getting the good work and that it was being spread out, so they weren't going to lose people who were not getting the right training. And they were avoiding a lot of the overwhelm that they were sensing in their associates. And it is reducing their attrition. We don't have the full data yet because it's not like they were losing 16 associates a month. So it takes a while to see those impacts, but it has definitely helped them. And they have said it's been very helpful to have this kind of tool now that everybody's working from home. So my big idea was to show you that you can use really simple tools and really basic approaches to solve problems in matter management in firms. And, I just keep touting the value of the basics like mapping and like Postit notes. And that's it.
Thanks so much. This is very informative and I believe quite revolutionary in a way. So for all of us, was that actually happening on meta or on task level? Because at least personally, I didn't actually see where this was going. I mean, was it just on meta level?
So what we did with them, they really needed to see who was working on what at a higher level. So this was not at the matter level. When you look into each card, you could get some information about where those matters stood. They will be starting to use boards to manage complex matters, but that was the next step for them. Right now, they just really wanted a high level picture of who was doing what in the department. This is what we call a work in progress board. So it's like a whip board. It had all of their open matters and the phase that those open matters were in. And then it's actually got, the firm has co-managing partners, and they would get together and they have a business manager who works with them. And that business manager is responsible for once a week updating this board to see who's working on what and where the matters stand.
So an element of like self-organization was not yet introduced because apparently there's nothing to pick. You get actually those matters allocated.
Yeah, they were not able to, at this level, they were allocating work to the juniors. So yeah, it's useful for the people who are staffing the deals, who are putting together the deal teams. That's what they needed to use it for. They now know they can use it for a lot of other things, and we anticipate that they will over time. But what they really needed was a simple way to see where the work should be allocated. So that was the point of this tool. We have other firms that we work with that are definitely using it at the matter level and at the personal organization level so that they track their tasks. They're not necessarily using Smartsheet for that. We have some other tools that work really well, like Legal Boards is a really good one. There are different tools that we recommend that people use for their personal matter management. But just to give them an overall view, this was a really affordable, the firm already had Smartsheet licenses, so it was a really affordable way for them to get a very quick solution to a problem.
Right. To Karen's point and your point, Ignaz, we actually are just starting an engagement with one of Canada's largest law firms, and their PM department, made up of 8 dedicated professionals, need to figure out how they can better manage their own workload and tasking. And so we're coaching them on the use of matter management boards at 3 distinct levels. One is how to manage and have a quick visual insight into the 80 projects they have ongoing at any given time, some of which are huge, like moving away from their document management system into iManage. So major multi-month or multi-year projects, right down to sort of much simpler things. So level 1 is the work in progress across the whole department. Then it's each individual project made up of multiple tasks can be managed the same way. And then individual project managers can have their own task board to know across the 80 projects what their responsibilities are and what they're working on. So they're already doing this. They want our insight as sort of experienced people doing this to help them understand how they might be able to supercharge it. So we're not setting it up for them. We're going to give them sort of a sounding board and coaching on how they might tweak what they're doing already to get a better handle.
I see that Isabel has a question too.
Yes, thank you, Karen. I have a question for you and David. Have you encountered any cultural issues in terms of having to do some change management at the beginning? I come from a very conservative culture from Latin America. People are not very keen to being told what to do, or sometimes being keen to try these new ways of organization. And sometimes I've seen that I have some early users. I want to actually use and implement these techniques. For some others, especially the more senior partners in law firms, or I work in an ISAP, they don't get so much involved in it, and they want the junior people to do these boards for them. They don't really understand the value, they don't see the value into getting involved in how this works? Have you had to do like a previous step in some terms in your experience?
So we run into the same issue with any kind of change in a lot of law firms, unless the senior partners really understand what's in it for them, then they're not going to likely change. And there maybe are some cultural impediments, but we find that culture of resistance to change pretty evenly spread across everyone, no matter what their background is. So for us, what we have done is work on what's in it for them, what benefits they are going to get from it. So for these guys, their pain point was, we are losing money because every time an associate leaves, it costs us $350,000. And then we have to waste a whole pile of time hiring someone and training someone. So they had a pain point that they needed to solve. And we didn't roll it out widely. We rolled it out with one small practice group in this huge firm. And we chose the people who were involved.
Actually, one small matter type in a large M&A department.
Yeah. So it was really the focus here was to get the people who were feeling the pain and who were ready to make a change and work with them. And then they didn't roll it out to all of the partners and all of the associates, because to be frank, a lot of the associates were worried that this would become a tool to be used against them, because the partners would go and look at the board and say, oh, Adam's only got one thing, I'm going to give Adam 16 more. So they had to show that they were using it responsibly from the partner level, but they got 2 or 3 partners involved, and then there are other partners who like it because they realize how much easier it's going to be for them to staff their teams. And so it's rolled out slowly that way. I mean, this mapping session that we did with them was pre-COVID. So that's basically been a year, and they're not 100% there by any means. It is a slow change. What I would say to you is just focus on what's important for your people, what their pain points are. And then this board is not being run by the most senior lawyers. This board is being run by the business manager, administrator guy who works in the firm, who works with them in the department, who was an associate there and has switched roles. So the partners get the benefit without any of the agony of having to put it together.
Thank you very much, both. I'm going to use that. Thank you.
Good. Any other questions?
Interesting enough, I had exactly that question raised this morning from a law firm to be, because they're about to set up actually a law firm from scratch, coming from a large law firm environment. And although there's a lot of openness, it's nonetheless actually paired with a high degree of skepticism towards actually that kind of approach. And yeah, this is so, I believe it's a huge success actually planting the seed in such an environment.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I would love to hand over to Harald and allow him to elaborate on his topic. And Harald and I actually sort of share the experience of meeting a couple of years back, and when Harald was already actually the first accredited LPM trainer in Germany, and since then actually we've actually we shared some of the successes and some of the challenges of the journey in the country. So over to you, Harald. I'm looking forward to your insights.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me and can you see my slide? Yes, perfect. So then, nice to meet you. Hello to everybody. First of all, I want to thank Ignaz for this great round, for the insights of all of you, the people you brought together. It is a real experience to me. Yes, who I am, I'm Harald Evers, working for a medium-sized law firm in Germany, and worked in my former times for a large company, stock listed, and also for 2 multinational consulting firms. And I've always worked in the fields of commercial and corporate law. And I always had the ability to get projects from my bosses, I don't know the word. Yes, the projects came to me, and all of the 10 years. And then I came to the LPM, first to Todd with the LPA, then to Anthony with the LPP. And then I had a 10-minute call with Ignaz, which lasts then, I think, 2 hours. I think we found each other. So, and beside my family and my job, my third topic in life is education. I founded an educational foundation for my old school, and it's one of my key points in life. And today I have the ability to bring both worlds together, legal education and legal project management. My thesis is that legal project management is a lifelong topic for all of us, all lawyers, all in-house counsels. And I think legal project management flanks and influence our work. Its importance grows parallel as to the standardization and digitization of legal work, and as law firms develops from a manufacturing approach to industry approach to provide services. Nevertheless, the main topic for lawyers will be or will remain to solve legal questions, but as I said, flanked by legal project management, and as Aileen emphasized, flanked by better social skills, because I think we are one of the professions which is the most, not one, we are the profession with the most traditional approach to work with others. My intention is to anchor legal project management in legal education and to make it to a permanent topic in education literature for lawyers and law students. And I would like to sensitize and to raise awareness for this topic. Not in the sense that that lawyers are the perfect project managers, but that they are sensitized to this topic and are able to speak with professional project managers on this topic. But this is my thesis. I think the basis or our starting point is a very other point. The traditional training content of law students are the classical areas of law, is constitutional law, is administration law, is civil law, is perhaps sociology and Roman history. Perhaps some of us have basic language courses during our studies, but all in all, it's very traditional and very concentrated on legal stuff. Secondly, the lawyers have, in Germany at least, an elite self-image, a lot of symbolism. They call each other colleague and not by the name. They have the tendency to be very conservative, static, and perhaps somehow in love with a form of unworldliness, I noticed me. So sometimes they are really not from this world. On the other hand, we have only a few education providers who are able to train modern subjects and who want to train modern subjects like legal project management. My experience, and I think Ignaz has the same, is that if you ask universities whether they are prepared to provide legal project management training, 5 of 6 say no, no interest, we don't want that, we don't need that, we don't like this. And I think this is a big mistake in the educational system. All in all, in Germany, it is that legal education shimmers mostly in the glory of the past, and we experience that after 5 until 7 years of education, the lawyers and judges are not able to do their work, not the classical work, and even not, or additionally, not modern work in large companies. And this is quite a shame, because you invest 7 years of your life to reach not so much. Yes. And on the other hand, we have the expectations of the clients who learn from other industries, especially the IT industry, that project management is art of the way to manage projects, to provide services, to provide products, and to form more value, and to have sure prizes, and to keep concentration on subjects and not on traditions. Further on, most lawyers are not happy with their professional life because they expect to able to attribute to professional work with high quality, not only in legal matters, but also in communication and in managing projects, but they are not able to, and they get the feedback from clients that the clients I think it started in the last 10 years, that the clients are not happy with the work of the attorney, and the attorney itself or himself is not able to match the expectations of the client. So what should we do? I think all of us should try to share legal project management knowledge everywhere you can, in books, online, in roundtables, and to start or to find an approach that this modern approaches like legal project management or legal design get some involvement into the classical legal education. I think it's not the aim to make future lawyers to top-of-the-notch project managers or better business people, but to reintegrate them into daily business in companies, society, and law firms. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Harald. It's a great reflection of the poor realities we're facing with traditional academic institutions. So, but sorry, Karen?
I was just going to say, we completely agree. I know David and I spoke to the dean of the law school at McGill, which is the local law school here in Montreal, at one of Canada's oldest law schools. For years, we could not get them to listen to anything about project management or process improvement or innovation. We now teach a course on innovation there once a year, but 2.5 days a year out of their entire law school career is not really enough. So I feel
Karen, as you're referring to the old dean, the new dean, the current dean is very open-minded. He's just trying to juggle so many different competing factors. But yeah, the new dean is fabulous.
Yeah.
But it is a nightmare. The perspective is, as I put in the note, we're an ivory tower. We teach people the theory of law. Everybody else, you've got your whole career to learn how to actually manage the legal practice. And I think that is just the wrong approach and the wrong attitude. I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, Harold. These are basic skills that people need to learn and be taught. Not only will they make them more productive and profitable, it will lead to a greater sense of mental health and wellness, something that lawyers and legal professionals are suffering terribly from a lack of, health and mental wellness and balance in their lives. And it's because we're taught how to practice law, the theory of law. We know how to solve a legal problem, but everything else, hiring, firing, managing people, finding new space, downsizing, dealing with pandemic crises, things like that. It's just not something we know how to do. We're not taught those skills.
Yep.
So may I pose a question to, in particular, those colleagues actually from the US? How do you deal with sort of this insufficient and inefficient tertiary education setup? I mean, what's your approach to make up for it and actually train your graduates, your young joiners properly and get them up to speed? What's your take? So I sense a little bit of a reluctance here to actually come.
Jump in, Len. Jump in.
Len, please.
I think you have to kind of complement whatever education they've had, if they've gone to a school that has introduced them to some of these concepts, just all along the point of their career. So during their orientation to the firm, as they move up into different levels, if there are professional development kind of programs in the organization, you work very hard to become part of those programs and to reinforce, these ideas, and to think about it from an educational standpoint, so that kind of as they're progressing in their career, you're reinforcing concepts that you've already introduced and building on those, and making things a little bit more sophisticated, giving them the vernacular to communicate in a business way, both to people who are running the operations of the firm and their clients. It's not a one-shot deal. You can't have a workshop and invite people and then expect them to go back and put this into play. You have to really think about the journey that they're going to be on as they learn how to become, successful lawyers, and just make it kind of normative that this is something of value to them, both personally and professionally. And some people, really take on, and learn those things and put them into practice and experiment with the different tools and techniques. And others are more influenced by some of the senior folks at the firm, and don't see as much value in it. But I think that's the approach we're taking, and it's been much more effective than just trying to do a workshop, and get everyone to come into a different place.
Harald, would you like to? I mean, obviously you worked for very large integrated audit consulting firms with properly laid out curricula in that regard.
Yes, but I think it's a real challenge for the leadership to introduce such a mindset into the organization, because lawyers are, yes, very hardly to be convinced. I think what you said, the large consulting companies, especially like the Big Four, are more able to adapt these new leadership and organization abilities because they have IT consultants which teach them internally, or which show them internally what's going on in the world. And I think the most bad position have the old only legal law firms without any accountants, without any IT consultants, because they are in their own Blase in German.
Yeah, bubble, yes.
Bubble, yeah, and it's very complicated to reach them with these ideas, and yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess this was one of the reasons. Yeah, so please go ahead.
Sorry, I agree that it's very challenging in the traditional legal, in the traditional law firm, probably especially still in South Africa. You need to really get the senior management team on board to see that those are the type of skills that's required. Right now, it's very still focused on, this is what I need to deliver. I'm an expert in the law. And then when legal professionals start moving out into corporates, you start understanding the gap that you really have. But what I've seen large corporates do with their in-house legal counsels is really getting the lawyers through almost like a gap study, whether it's a management program. So it becomes part of your career development in how you're able to understand business principles to become that business partner. Some of the large law firms are seeing the benefit of it now, and have also got programs that their associates and candidate attorneys go through. But until we acknowledge that lawyers need to have business acumen and business skills, we're not really going to see a rapid change.
what I think is that the clients in business law will enforce the law firms to improve their legal project management because they are not prepared to tolerate anymore this unproductive process management and project management within traditional law firms. And so I think we will have some kind of market clearance. I think a lot of traditional law firms will disappear the next 10 years because they are not able to expect to meet the expectations, and perhaps this will be the hard way to come together, clients and law firms.
And these clients are interestingly moving ahead at lightning speed. I mean, there's a large Netherlands-based international bank, and they all the corporate functions were asked to introduce Agile overnight. So the legal department was not excluded as usual, and to quote the head of legal operations, he then actually bought a couple of books, read them, and tried to figure out what it would actually mean to the legal team. And the legal team comprises around about 30 practitioners, usually actually admitted attorneys who at some point in life actually chose to go in-house and leave private practice. And overnight they themselves actually created their own sort of actually interpretation of Agile. And now after 1.5 years, they finally decided it's about time now to bring in a proper Agile coach and just fix the little things and tweak it a bit more. But ultimately, I mean, it was a very brave approach, but you can imagine, I mean, what it would look like actually if you were one of these external counsel. And then, external counsel, and then actually being confronted, I mean, in inverted commas, being confronted with a client like that, actually radically interrogating their own position in that regard. So quite an interesting case, actually, and it's been widely told on all these conferences for corporate counsel. And lawyers have not yet actually listened carefully enough in order to actually take away the message from this. And this won't be the only in-house department actually going down that route. So in that regard, I think also in terms of closing this, I mean, Karen, you mentioned $350,000 actually of sort of sunk costs. I mean, let's face it, part of that is actually the education you should have actually received during university times, and lawyers and law firms actually have to pay for that in order to, and that could have saved the money, and we could have saved the time actually from a law firm perspective to actually take all the people through those trainings.
Yeah, you're right. Listen, I'm going to have to leave. Unfortunately, David and I have to do some coaching with our membership this afternoon, so I will leave, but thank you all very much, everybody.
We will conclude the session. Let me wish you well, and we will, as I said in the beginning, we'll take a short break until end of Feb. So in the meantime, although, I mean, I hope you're actually in a country with an able government, with access to vaccines and get vaccinated soon. So otherwise, keep safe and well, and spread the word. If you got a great idea or you know somebody who got a great idea in the context of legal project management, please share it. I mean, we're always looking for great speakers, interesting personalities of the legal fraternity in the widest possible definition. And otherwise, thanks for being here, for joining us, and see you soon.